up on the streets, and he enhanced services for them at the federal level to help them get free counseling, free access to rehab, free medical while they were in those places getting those services. And Donald Trump came in and scrapped that whole plan. And it took Biden pretty much half of his first term to the middle of second term to get all the bills passed for that, to help militaries and to give access to their families for kids who had either been killed in the line of fire or had committed suicide. Those things are super important. People do not realize what happens when people come back from war. A lot of people will never know that. I don't even know it. I can't even speak to it, but I deal with clients who've dealt with it. So I know some stuff about it. So he also made, in Delaware, he helped, his wife and him spearheaded a campaign to help access services for single moms in Delaware. So they've always been helping people. And even Jill, like I mentioned earlier, she teaches at a community college, even though she's had offers from, Harvard, she's had offers from Yale, because she believes that these people need access to education and to people from high caliber, because she did graduate from an Ivy League school. So she believes that people should have access to that kind of education, even at community colleges. So that stuff impresses me. So I believe moving forward, I think that Biden has been around this, he's been involved in government for nearly 50 years. So I believe that he has the skills and experience to actually mend fences with Republicans to get them to come to somewhat of an even playing ground once they remove Trump out of the picture. When you remove the gaslighter from the situation, now you have the ability to work with people, because not all Republicans were supporting Trump. They were supportive they saved face for the party. But I bet you if you went to every senator and said, when you voted for president, did you vote for Trump? Half of them would lie and say, yes, they did, but really they didn't. Because there were staunch, Republican states. I never thought I would see Georgia ever become a Democratic state. I never thought I would see that ever in my life. And clearly Donald Trump didn't. And even Joe Biden was surprised by that. He didn't think he was going to get Georgia. But people have spoken. People realize that they need Biden because Biden has the ability. If you watched his message tonight, his message was that level of hope that Obama had when he spoke. People are, on Facebook, this is the first time in 4 years I've seen happy, positive messages. Right? And then you see the occasional person who's a Republican going, yeah, I can't wait until this goes to court. This is the kind of anger that Donald Trump has brought out in people. He's excused racism to an nth degree. The minute he didn't go against white supremacy or say it's wrong, and he said, some of them aren't so bad. There needs to be an amendment in the United States that if your president's a shady asshole, you have the right to remove him. And I think that we're going to see amendments come into play with the Democratic Party, because Nancy Pelosi has just drawn up an amendment to give the rest of the government, the House, the Senate, the ability to remove what she views as an unfit president. So whether it be...
That's not going to happen.
Well, I hope...
Give her no power. Nancy's almost dead. They're not going to give her no power. The reason I want to talk about Joe for just a minute is because it's really important to find out where he comes from, where he stood, what he did when he was in office, and what he can do now to change, to make things better for Americans that he couldn't do when him and Obama, which is a very important question, because we need to understand why couldn't he. First of all, the power of the first Black man being in president, and then second of all, an older white man that's been in politics, like you said, for 50 years, that they couldn't get done with those two, that he's going to now try to apply a new agenda with a woman, an African-American, a Spanish African-American woman, or just African-American woman. Now, I can just imagine what the Republican Party And those old white men in the Senate in Massachusetts are sitting around their table right now saying, so
Absolutely.
I know as an American, I know that Biden is going to get by with being Mr. Nice Guy, but he ain't pushing nothing past those that Senate and that Republican Party without being beat up. Because if he got those same senators, those same Republicans, a lot of them were voted back in. Did you notice that?
That's, you know what, that is right. But what's interesting though for me is like you said earlier, healthcare is a massive thing, and he was one of the ones that helped spearhead the Obamacare thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now the problem is that back then, that is when there was still no black marks against the insurance companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now the insurance companies have been dragged to task by Elizabeth Warren on countless times in the House.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that they're going to put together a government. They're going to have people in places where Wall Street and big pharma and and overpriced insurance companies aren't going to be getting away with what they were got through in the past. And that would be the biggest contribution to the American people. Because you know what? I have a friend's mom who's Republican, and she needs a hip replacement and has no insurance. She's waiting for Medicare to come through. And what she thinks is that this was because of Obamacare. And I was like, I don't think it's about Obamacare. I think it's the American health system, period. And I don't think that it's a government thing. I think it's well, the government sideline, people can pay for healthcare. People can pay for healthcare. People can pay for healthcare. You know what? There are people paying $1,200 a month for their insurance down there. How are people expected to pay that? How is somebody on $40,000 a year expected to pay for health insurance? And I think the Bidens, particularly with, trust me, Biden's wife is going to play a huge role in the public. She's a woman that can speak to women regardless of whether they're Democratic or Republican. And I believe collectively, along with Kamala and along with the people, if you put Elizabeth Warren in a position where it allows her to go after people, you're going to see a lot of change on Wall Street. It's not about what Joe Biden can do. It's about Joe Biden putting together a team, a house of cards that can't topple. Because the problem is, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, I don't hate Donald Trump. But what I do hate is that he puts people in positions that are unqualified to do their jobs, like Betsy DeVos, Mike Pence, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Kellyanne Conway, Mitch McConnell, people who are just as dumb as can be. And that is why you see what's happening in the United States. Donald Trump alone didn't get to do this. He had a whole team of assholes to come and back him up to do it. So what Joe does is he doesn't need to be picking his best friends. He needs to pick the people that are qualified for the jobs. Pete Buttigieg, PhD, Oxford, great. Has military experience in management? Great, perfect. Let's put him as the Secretary of Defense. That guy will fix the military. That guy will look for ways to cut money back. He admits that they spend too much money on military. Pete Buttigieg is the biggest proponent of that, even though he was part of the military. You put Elizabeth Warren in, Harvard